Between 1580 and 1630, across Europe and colonial America, thousands of people, most of them women, were subjected to torture so extreme that they confessed to impossible crimes. Then they were executed in ways designed to maximize suffering and public terror. This wasn't the Dark Ages. This was the early modern period, an era of scientific advancement and religious reformation. Yet courts sanctioned methods of execution that rivaled anything from ancient Rome or medieval dungeons. These are the deaths that reveal how mass hysteria, combined with legal authority, can transform justice into industrial-scale murder. The man who chose to be crushed, September 17, 1692, Salem, Massachusetts. Giles Corey was 81 years old. For decades, he'd been a respected landowner in Salem Village, known for his stubbornness and quick temper. That summer, when witchcraft accusations swept through the community like contagion, Corey found himself among the accused. He made an unusual decision. He refused to enter a plea, neither guilty nor not guilty. The court had a solution for silent defendants: peine forte et dure, pressing with hard weights until the accused either pleaded or died. If Corey stood trial and was convicted, the court would seize his property. If he died without trial, his land would pass to his heirs. Giles Corey chose to be crushed to death to protect his children's inheritance. On that September morning, Corey was stripped and led to an open field behind the jail. He was forced to lie on his back on the cold ground. Sheriff George Corwin placed a heavy wooden board across his naked body. Then, one by one, stones were added. The first few weighed only a few pounds, then larger ones, then boulders. The weight on his chest made each breath a struggle. Witnesses reported that Corey's face turned red, then purple, as the pressure crushed his ribcage. When asked if he would now enter a plea, Corey managed only 2 words: more weight. Sheriff Corwin ordered additional rocks piled on. By nightfall, Corey's chest was compressed under hundreds of pounds of stone. His breathing became shallow gasps. They left him there overnight. On the second day, his tongue began to protrude from his mouth as internal organs were forced upward. Blood seeped from his nose and ears. His eyes bulged. Each breath became shorter than the last. Just after noon on September 19th, witnesses noticed Corey had stopped gasping. Giles Corey died without entering a plea. By refusing, he prevented the court from trying him and seizing his property. His land passed directly to his sons. His final act of defiance, purchased with 48 hours of agony, protected his children's inheritance from the same court that crushed the life from his body. The family destroyed in Munich's marketplace, July 29, 1600. Munich, Bavaria. The Pappenheimer family, Paulus, his wife Anna, and their 3 adult sons, Jakob, Gumprecht, and Hoel, worked as vagrant latrine cleaners among the lowest social classes in Bavaria. When local robberies occurred, authorities arrested the family on suspicion. Under brutal interrogation, theft charges rapidly escalated to accusations of witchcraft and infanticide. Bavarian officials subjected them to extreme torture. Fingernails were torn out. Bodies were suspended from ceiling hooks. Red-hot pincers tore their flesh. After days of agony, they confessed to impossible crimes: murdering children, making magical salves from infant corpses, signing blood pacts with Satan himself. The execution began in Munich's marketplace before thousands of spectators. A scaffold had been prepared with burning braziers, iron wheels, and sharpened stakes. 10-year-old Hansel, their youngest child, was forced to watch from the front row. The executioners began with Anna. They severed her breasts with heated shears while she remained conscious, then forced the bloody flesh into the mouths of her screaming sons. One by one, the men had their arms and legs shattered with iron bars. The executioner methodically broke each limb in multiple places, then threaded their mangled bodies through the spokes of large wooden wheels, a torture device designed to prolong death while putting the broken body on display. While still alive, glowing iron tongs tore 6 pieces of flesh from each family member's body. Paulus, as patriarch, received special treatment. A sharpened stake was hammered through his anus and up through his torso. Impalement, one of the most agonizing deaths imaginable. The family remained alive throughout much of the mutilation. Witnesses reported their screams echoing across the marketplace. The adults survived for over an hour before executioners finally lit the pyre beneath them. As flames consumed what remained of the family, officials seized young Hansel and led him away. Court records show the boy was executed months later, completing the eradication of the entire bloodline. If you appreciate this level of historical documentation that doesn't sanitize the brutal realities of the past, please consider liking this video. The city that burned for 12 years. Between 1581 and 1593, the ancient German city of Trier became ground zero for one of history's most concentrated witch hunts. Under Prince Archbishop Johann VII von Schönenberg, accusations of witchcraft spread through the region like an epidemic. No one was safe. Nobles, merchants, university professors, and even Catholic priests found themselves dragged before witch courts on the flimsiest evidence. The mechanism was systematic. First came torture in underground chambers. Suspects were stripped naked and subjected to the strappado, arms tied behind their backs before being hoisted by ropes until shoulders dislocated. Thumbscrews crushed fingers until bones splintered. Confessions inevitably followed. Court records show that 368 people were officially condemned and executed. But historians believe the actual number was far higher, perhaps exceeding 1,000 deaths. Execution pyres were constructed along the banks of the Moselle River. The burning sites operated with industrial efficiency. Executioners chained victims in groups of 6 or 8 to large wooden stakes. Victims were surrounded by precisely arranged bundles of green wood, deliberately chosen because it burned slower than dried timber, prolonging suffering. Witnesses described how victims remained conscious as flames licked up their bodies. The green wood produced thick, choking smoke. Some victims took over 30 minutes to die, their screams gradually weakening as lungs filled with toxic fumes, skin blackened and peeled away from muscle tissue, eyes boiled in their sockets from the intense heat. During winter months, citizens reported that snow would melt in a wide circle around the execution grounds. A contemporary chronicler wrote that the city glowed red for nights on end as multiple pyres burned simultaneously. The local executioner grew so wealthy from confiscated property that he built a mansion near the cathedral. The supreme irony of Trier's burnings lay in their justification. Court documents show that officials claimed the smoke from burning witches purified the air of demonic influence, even as that same smoke carried the rendered fat and charred flesh of innocent citizens across the city. The midwife who delivered Death Dillingen, Bavaria. For nearly 2 decades, Walpurga Hausmannen had served as a licensed midwife, bringing hundreds of children safely into the world. That spring, a neighbor accused her of causing a miscarriage through sorcery. Within days, she was arrested. Interrogators wasted no time. They stripped Walpurga naked and applied the leg screws, a device whose metal teeth bit into flesh until blood flowed freely. Court records show she maintained her innocence for 3 days. Then came the strappado. Her arms were wrenched behind her back and hoisted by rope until both shoulders dislocated with audible cracks. Under unbearable pain, Walpurga began to confess. She admitted to a pact with a demon named Federlin, who visited her in the form of a handsome man. She claimed to have murdered 41 infants before baptism, sucking their blood and harvesting their tiny finger bones for magical power. Each confession led interrogators to demand more names, more crimes, more evidence of diabolic conspiracy. On execution day, Walpurga was paraded through town on a cart. At 5 designated spots, the procession halted. At each stop, the executioner applied glowing red irons to her body. Left breast, right arm, right breast, left arm, and finally, her left hand. Witnesses reported the sizzle of flesh and the smell of burning fat permeating the marketplace. Still conscious, Walpurga moaned prayers between screams. At the execution site outside town, the final indignity awaited. The executioner severed her right hand, the one she had used to deliver babies and take her midwife's oath. Only then was she chained to the stake. The pyre was lit. Flames engulfed her mutilated body. As dictated by her sentence, officials collected her ashes afterward and scattered them into the Danube River, ensuring no grave would mark her existence. The trial that consumed a village, Zugarramurdi, a small mountain village in Spain's Basque country. Local authorities claimed that devil-worshipping rituals took place in the village's limestone cave, a vast natural chamber over 120 meters long. The first accusations came from 13-year-old Maria de Chimildegui, who claimed she had witnessed neighbors dancing with demons and consuming infants. The Spanish Inquisition responded with overwhelming force. Inquisitor Alonso de Salazar Frias arrived with a team of clerks and torturers, establishing a tribunal in the nearby town of Logroño. Within months, over 7,000 people fell under suspicion. These mass persecutions raise profound questions about how fear, authority, and torture can create false realities. What parallels, if any, do you see with modern phenomena? Share your thoughts in the comments. The interrogations followed a meticulous pattern: sleep deprivation, followed by the garrucha, a pulley system that dislocated shoulders, and finally, the toca, where water was forced down the throat until the stomach distended painfully. By 1610, inquisitors had extracted 2,000 confessions and formally charged 301 individuals. Confessions described impossible events: flying on goats to Sabbaths, transforming into animals, consuming the flesh of disinterred corpses. Court records show that most confessed only after witnessing the torture of family members. On November 7, 1610, the auto da fe began in Logroño's main square. 11 condemned witches, 5 men and 6 women, were led to wooden stakes erected in the plaza. The victims wore yellow sanbenitos painted with flames and devils. Several victims continued to proclaim their innocence even as executioners chained them to the stakes. The fires were lit simultaneously as thousands of spectators watched. The wood had been stacked to ensure maximum suffering before death. Victims screamed as flames consumed their lower extremities first. It took over 30 minutes for most to die as flames gradually climbed their bodies. Smoke enveloped the square. The smell of charred human flesh permeated the city. The cruelest twist came 3 years later. After investigating further, Inquisitor Salazar concluded that not a single act of witchcraft had actually occurred. "There were neither witches nor bewitched," he wrote, "until they were talked and written about." By then, the 11 victims were already ash. The bishop's burning season between 1626 and 1630, the prosperous German city of Würzburg descended into madness under Prince Bishop Philipp Adolf von Ehrenberg. The bishop had become convinced that a satanic conspiracy had infected his territory. What followed was not merely a witch hunt, but systematic extermination. Court records show that over 900 people were burned at the stake in Würzburg and its surrounding villages during this 4-year period. The executions were conducted with mechanical precision. Every few weeks, guards would round up between 15 and 25 new victims. They were held in the city's witch house, a specialized prison where windows were bricked up to prevent any possible escape through demonic flight. Torture was applied methodically. Thumbscrews, leg vices that crushed shin bones, and the strappado to dislocate shoulders. The victims defied all expectations. The executioner's ledger lists children as young as 9 sent to the stake. In one instance, the entire choir of Würzburg Cathedral, 27 boys, was accused and executed. 19 Catholic priests burned. Even the bishop's own nephew met the same fate. No social class was spared. Burgomaster, university professors, wealthy merchants, all burned alongside beggars and peasants. During the winter months of 1628, condemned witches were forced to walk barefoot through snow to their execution site. Their feet left bloody trails on the frost-covered ground. The pyres were constructed at the city's edge. Court documents specify that victims were bound to stakes with iron chains, surrounded by green wood to slow the burning process. The smoke was visible for miles. On days when multiple executions took place, the sky above Würzburg darkened with human ash. A contemporary account describes how snow would melt in a wide circle around the burning grounds, even in January. Prince Bishop von Ehrenberg justified the slaughter by declaring that the air shall be cleansed by their smoke, creating the grotesque irony that the very smoke he claimed would purify actually contained the atomized remains of his innocent subjects. The Tavern Keeper of Aberdeen, Scotland. Janet Wishart was a well-known tavern keeper, married with several children. Her troubles began when a local nobleman accused her of causing his illness through witchcraft. Within days, city authorities dragged her from her home to the Tolbooth prison. The interrogation followed standard procedure for Scottish witch trials. Janet's clothes were cut away, and witch prickers searched her body for the devil's mark. Any mole, birthmark, or scar that didn't bleed when pierced with a needle. After examiners claimed to find such a mark, Janet faced the Brodkin, wooden boots into which wedges were hammered, crushing the leg bones slowly. Court records show she endured this torture for 3 hours before confessing. Her confession grew increasingly elaborate under continued torture. She admitted to meeting the devil at midnight, to transforming into a crow, to raising storms that sank fishing boats, and to poisoning wells. Each new confession implicated other townspeople, feeding the growing panic. By the time her trial concluded, Janet had named over 20 alleged accomplices, most of whom would later face their own executions. On January 28, 1597, Janet was scheduled for execution. Guards stripped her to the waist and placed an iron collar around her neck. She was paraded through Aberdeen streets, while the town crier announced her crimes at each intersection. Witnesses described how citizens hurled refuse and insults as she passed. At the execution site on Castle Hill, the magistrates ordered her to be mercifully strangled before burning, a rare concession. The executioner wrapped a rope around her neck and pulled tight while she stood at the stake. As she lost consciousness, her body was secured with chains. The pyre was lit. Flames consumed her remains completely. Within hours, her ashes were scattered into the North Sea. Janet's daughter was banished from Aberdeen for life. Her husband, driven mad by witnessing her torture, died in an almshouse months later. That same year, King James VI published his Demonology, a treatise arguing for aggressive prosecution of witches that would inspire hundreds more executions across Scotland. Salem's first execution, June 10, 1692. Salem, Massachusetts. Bridget Bishop was a middle-aged tavern keeper known for her outspoken manner and fondness for colorful clothing. Neighbors testified that she wore a scarlet bodice, considered scandalously provocative in Puritan Massachusetts. That spring, when several local girls began experiencing strange fits, Bridget quickly became a target for accusations. Her trial lasted just one day. Spectral evidence dominated the proceedings, testimony that Bridget's shape or spirit had appeared to torment accusers while her physical body was elsewhere. One witness claimed her specter stood at the foot of his bed and oppressed him so that he could neither move nor speak. Others testified that Bishop had bewitched their pigs to death and cursed their beer to spoil. No physical evidence was presented. The judges deliberated for less than an hour before pronouncing her guilty. At sunrise on June 10th, Bridget was removed from her cell. Her hands were bound with rough hemp rope. She was placed in a cart alongside the town's minister, who urged her to confess even now. Court records indicate she maintained her innocence throughout the 2-mile journey to Gallows Hill. At the execution site, a crude gallows awaited, a simple wooden beam extended from an oak tree. Bridget climbed the ladder. The noose was placed around her neck, the hemp rope rough against her skin. Some accounts claim she tried to speak final words, but the crowd's jeers drowned them out. The ladder was suddenly pulled away. Bridget's body dropped approximately 3 feet before the rope went taut. Without a proper drop to break the neck, death came slowly. Her face turned purple as the noose constricted her airway. Her body twisted and jerked as she struggled for oxygen. Witnesses reported her fingers clawing at the rope for nearly 2 minutes before she finally went still, swinging gently in the summer breeze. Bridget's body remained hanging for hours as a warning to others. By sunset, she was cut down and buried in an unmarked grave at the execution site. Her death marked the beginning of a summer that would claim 19 more lives before Salem's madness finally subsided. The mechanics of mass murder. Between 1580 and 1750, approximately 40,000 to 60,000 people were executed for witchcraft in Europe and colonial America. Some historians place the number even higher. These weren't random acts of violence. They were systematic, legally sanctioned, meticulously documented killings carried out by courts, churches, and civil authorities. The witch hunts reveal several disturbing truths about how societies can descend into mass murder. Torture produces false confessions. When subjected to the strappado, thumb screws, leg crushers, and sleep deprivation, people will confess to anything: flying on broomsticks, having sex with demons, eating babies. The confessions were taken as proof of guilt, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of accusation and execution. Mass hysteria spreads through social networks. In Trier, Würzburg, and Zugarramurdi, accusations spread like contagion. Each tortured confession produced new names, new accusations, new victims. Communities tore themselves apart. Legal authority enables atrocity. These weren't mob lynchings, they were trials, complete with prosecutors, judges, and written sentences. The apparatus of justice transformed torture and execution into bureaucratic procedure. Economic incentives fueled persecution. Executioners grew wealthy from confiscated property. Courts profited from fines and fees. The accused paid for their own torture and execution costs. Murder became profitable. No one was safe. The witch hunts didn't target only the marginalized. University professors burned alongside beggars. Priests burned alongside prostitutes. Children burned alongside the elderly. Once the machinery of persecution began operating, it consumed everyone in its path. Perhaps most disturbing is how recent this history is. Giles Corey was pressed to death just over 330 years ago. The Würzburg burnings happened during the same era as Shakespeare and Galileo. This wasn't the distant medieval past. It was the early modern period, an age of scientific revolution and religious reformation. The witch hunts remind us that civilization is fragile, that legal systems can become engines of oppression, that torture produces false confessions, that mass hysteria, combined with institutional authority, can transform justice into industrial-scale murder. The names of most victims are lost, but their deaths, documented in court records and witness testimonies, stand as warnings about what happens when fear, authority, and cruelty combine in the machinery of the state. If this historical examination of how legal systems can enable mass atrocity moved you, please like this video, share your reflections in the comments, and subscribe for more documentaries that confront difficult historical truths. Thank you for watching.